Hello everyone, warm welcome to Super Coaching Regulatory Bodies YouTube channel by Testbook. My name is Madhav Sir. I welcome you all in a very important session where we are going to discuss the RBI Annual Report 2024-25. I hope guys, if you are preparing for this examination, you are very well aware regarding the importance of this particular report, because this report is really very important not only for your phase 1 examination. We cannot say that the questions will be asked alone from phase 1 in this particular report, but along with that we can expect the questions in phase 2, as well as there is a great probability that the questions will be asked in your interview section as well. So in order to help you guys in an appropriate manner so that you can prepare for this particular report pretty well, I have tried my level best to simplify this report. I have simplified the report in a very simple language so that you can understand it, and even I have come up with few MCQs on the basis of the same report so that you can recall the report in this session itself. तो जो हमने पढ़ा उसी को हम क्वेश्चंस की मदद से जाते हुए रिवाइज करेंगे, so that before leaving the session you have that confidence कि हाँ यार कुछ ना कुछ पढ़ा जरूर है, कुछ ना कुछ समझ जरूर आया, और इस रिपोर्ट से अगर कोई क्वेश्चन एग्जामिनेशन में पूछा जाएगा तो आई विल बी इन अ पोजीशन टू आंसर दिस क्वेश्चन फॉर श्योर. ठीक है जी, चलो बहुत बढ़िया. लेट्स बिगिन द डिस्कशन, गिव यू गाइस सो दैट यू कैन लर्न दिस रिपोर्ट इन द डिले. Quickly reply in the comment section if we are good to go. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up everyone so that we can begin the discussion without any further delay. Quickly. I hope audio, video, everything is fine. No more buffering, nothing. Chalo. So first of all, if I talk about this RBI annual report, what do you understand with this report? See guys, we know that RBI is an organization which is operating under Government of India, or I would say which is owned by Government of India. So if RBI is owned by Government of India, then it's quite obvious RBI is responsible to inform the government. RBI is responsible to inform the government about its working as well as operations. And RBI informed Government of India about its working as well as operations with the help of the annual report. So basically annual report is the statement which include every aspect of RBI, every step taken by RBI from 1st April to 31st March. Not only the initiatives taken by RBI, not only the policies initiated by RBI, it also includes the result of this policy, result of RBI initiatives on the Indian economy. Not only this, RBI also share the status of global economy. RBI also share the status of Indian economy in its report itself. So in this manner, this report has been divided. But the first thing from where I'm going to start my discussion is that this particular report is presented by RBI, but this report is not presented to the public. This report is basically presented to the government because RBI is owned by the government, and government has this authority, has the power to know about the working of this organization. So as you can see on your screen, this is a letter written by Governor of RBI to the Finance Secretary of India, and it says, "Dear Finance Secretary, as per section 53 subsection 2 of Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. So remember this, section 53 subsection 2 of RBI Act 1934 gives RBI the power to present the annual report and submit its annual report to the Government of India. So they says that a copy of annual accounts for the year ended 31st March 2025 certified by bank auditors, signed by Chief General Manager in charge, Deputy Governor, as well as me, that is the Governor of RBI. So we are sharing with you the annual accounts. Annual account means what is the current outstanding of RBI in terms of forex reserves, in terms of assets, in terms of liabilities, in terms of revenue, in terms of expenditure. So annual accounts are presented to you. Along with that, we are giving you two copies. We are giving you two copies of the annual report of Central Board on the working of bank, that is Reserve Bank of India, during 1st April 2024 to 31st March 2025. So you need to remember this particular report with you need to remember the particular section name, and the section is 53 subsection 2 of RBI Act 1934, which gives the power to RBI in order to present the annual report, and two copies of this annual report is submitted by the RBI to the government. Along with that, a copy of annual account is also submitted, which is audited by the RBI's auditor. It is signed by the Chief General Manager, who is in charge. It is signed by the Deputy Governor, as well as it is signed by the RBI's Governor. So these are the documents which are submitted by RBI to the Government of India. This is the first thing which you need to remember. Now, this report is divided. This report is basically divided into two parts. We have part 1, which talks about the economy, review and prospects. So in the part 1 of this particular report, it talks about global economy, what is the status of global economy, as well as RBI has discussed the status of Indian economy. Now you must be wondering कि sir global economy, Indian economy में क्या basically discuss किया गया, what all things have been basically shared by RBI. So the first thing which RBI has shared with you all is that is the GDP growth estimates. That is the GDP growth estimates, not only for India but also for the global level. They have shared the inflation rate estimates. They have even shared the status of trade as well as settlement. They have even shared the status of foreign direct investment, or I would say status of foreign investment and remittance. So these are the parameters, these are the indicators which have been discussed. Now you must be wondering कि sir ये data बहुत ज़्यादा important है. I would say yes, this data is important because in the RBI report, in the RBI report, RBI has not only shared the data of 2024-25, which means in the annual report, RBI has not only given the result that how Indian economy, how the global economy has operated in 2024-25, rather RBI has provided the targets for the future in 2025-26. What are the targets which India is going to achieve, or what rates we can expect the global economy to grow? And in some cases, wherever required, RBI has also shared the previous year data in order to give you a comparative analysis. So these all things we are going to discuss. Now, if you haven't downloaded this report, then I would like to discuss with you these. The first chapter talks about global economy, Indian economy overview, and this overview is being discussed in detail. It is being discussed in detail in the real economy part. It is being discussed in detail in the real economy part as well as price situation. Real economy part as well as price situation. So what I have done is I will be discussing the first chapter first, then I will be moving on to rest of the chapters, and chapter wise we will be completing this particular report. Got it guys? एक structure समझ आया? Now the next point is, sir, according to you, what is the importance of this annual report, especially this year? I would say the importance of this annual report this year is because of some of the factors. What all those factors are? If I talk about the factors, that is global economic situations, which include geopolitical tensions, it includes geo-economic fragmentation, it includes heightened trade tensions, as well as increase in public debt all over the globe is the current situation. So in this current situation, coming up with the data, and that too an organization like RBI, and that too the data for the entire globe, is of immense importance, not only for the candidates who are preparing for RBI Grade B examination. Rather, I would say this report is very much important for everyone who is directly or indirectly related to the financial world. So let's discuss each and every point one by one. So the first point from where I would like to discuss is, sir, 2024-25 according to RBI has recorded a steady growth, So global economy has witnessed a steady growth. So this is the first point which you need to remember. This is the steady growth has been witnessed because of some of the reasons. First one, geopolitical tensions, geoeconomic fragmentations, as well as trade tensions and elevated public debt situation which is witnessed in the economy. Geopolitical tension, I'm talking about Russia-Ukraine war, or even you can take Operation Sindoor. Then in geoeconomic fragmentation, I'm talking about the economic issues which are prevailing with the economy, the sanctions which have been announced by certain economies. Then trade tension, I'm talking about US trade tension, the reciprocal taxes which have been introduced by US has resulted in trade tension. And during COVID, every economy was trying its level best to survive those hard days, and in order to survive those hard days, government has borrowed a lot, and that borrowing which has been done since COVID period, it has come up with a result of elevated public debt. That means government debt is increasing. Some of the economies, they are on the verge to be declared as economies under debt, and debt to GDP ratio is going to be approximately equal to 100%. So for few economies, we are expecting, or it is estimated, that debt to GDP ratio will even reach to a value of 100%, which is obviously not appropriate, which is obviously not acceptable for any economy all around the globe. I hope you understand this point. Moving on to the second point. The second point says global inflation moderated in 2024 on the back of softening commodity prices, easing supply conditions, and the lagged impact of monetary tightening in 2022. So what does this point say? This point says that global inflation rates, which were pretty high in the past, now they have dropped down. Why the global inflation rates have been dropped down? So global inflation rates have been dropped down due to few reasons. First one is decrease in commodity prices over the period of time. The commodity prices has decreased. Second point is supply chain, which was hampered a lot. Now over the period of time, the supply chain is restored. The conditions in order to achieve the supply chain has been eased out all over the globe. And lastly, monetary tightening. So monetary tightening means not only RBI but most of the banks, they have increased their policy rates in order to tighten the flow of money supply in the market. But the impact of this monetary tightening has been witnessed with a delay, which was introduced in 2022, but its impact has been witnessed in 2024, because of which finally the inflation rates have fallen down. The next point, which is really very important, that is related to Indian economy. Sir, during this global situation of one side, you're talking about geopolitical tensions, geoeconomic fragmentation, then you talk about trade tensions. On the other side, you talk about the inflation rates. How Indian economy has performed in contrast to this? If I say about Indian economy, then my answer would be, sir, Indian economy has witnessed a resilience. Indian economy has presented or come up with a resilience. That means Indian economy was resilient, it was resistant, it was as it is in the financial year 2024-25, which was not much affected by the global situations, by the global parameters, because of two reasons. So the first reason was macroeconomic fundamentals, which include monetary policy, fiscal policy and whatnot, and along with that some of the proactive policies which have been implemented by the government has safeguarded the Indian economy to stand strong during the tough period as well. During the period when there is global unrest, India is still performing pretty well. So that was only and only because of macroeconomic fundamentals and proactive policy measures. The next point, if I talk about, sir, now you're talking about the global inflation rates. As you say, the global inflation rate has eased out over the period of time. if the global inflation rate has eased out, it must had a positive impact on the financial sector. So what is the report? What is the overall status of the financial sector of the world? If I talk about the overall financial sector of the world, then I would say financial sector all over the world has witnessed a great up and down. Some of the banks, they have been failed in the past, and some of the banks, they have recorded huge losses in the past. But if I talk about the financial sector of India, so India's financial sector has also again shown a resilience, where Indian financial sector has performed really very well during these global crisis, during these global tough times as well. So you need to remember, financial sector of India remained resilient. It was robust due to the healthier banks of India, due to the non-bank balance sheets, improved asset quality and capital buffers that have enabled the double-digit credit growth in the country. So unlike world, financial sector of India has performed really very well because of some of the reasons. Few reasons will be the healthier banks. Banks are healthier because of the RBI norms, RBI policies. Even banks were healthier due to the capital buffers which banks have been maintaining. I'm talking about capital adequacy ratio. I'm talking about conservation buffer. I'm talking about counter-cyclical capital buffer. Guys, I have a question for you. What is the range of counter-cyclical capital buffer? So the range of counter-cyclical capital buffer is 0 to 2.5% of RWA. And give me one answer in the comment section. This counter-cyclical capital buffer is maintained on the basis of what parameter? There is a parameter, there is a ratio, or I would say there is a difference between the ratios. Which ratio we are talking about over here? Give me the answer. I will be moving ahead. Moving on to the next point. The next point says, sir, Indian government has shown a strong, or Indian government was pretty strong during this tough times all over the globe because of few reasons. First reason is India's tax revenue. As we have noticed in the past, India's tax revenue has improved a lot. India's tax revenue has improved a lot. Along with that, Government of India has used this increased tax revenue to maintain its expenditure, quality. And expenditure quality basically means government is trying its level best to increase its expenditure in the category of capital expenditure, which is helping the economy to grow as infrastructure growth rate is witnessed in the economy in the past. So remember that central government continued with its efforts towards fiscal consolidation, supported by tax revenues while maintaining the thrust on capital expenditure quality. Last but not the least is India during this time has recorded current account deficit. It's okay. A current account is deficit. Why it is okay? Because we have recorded a low current account deficit, and in some time I will be discussing with you the terms, the figures, the values as well of the current account deficit which India has recorded in the past. Samajh aa gayi baat? Story is clear. What is the story? So the story is global tensions, global economy is not doing well. Still, Indian economy has performed really very well in the financial year 2024-25 because of proactive policies, as well as macroeconomic framework which have been implemented by RBI as well as government collectively. If this slide is clear, you want me to move ahead, just give me yes. If this slide is clear, just give me yes, sir. धीरे धीरे नेगेटिव भी आएगा अंकुल, डोंट वरी. दैट इज एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट. क्रेडिट टू जीडीपी, गैप, जीडीपी रेशियो गैप, credit GDP ratio gap. That is absolutely correct. Only one student out of 60 have given the correct answer. Chalo, no worries. Let's move on to the next point. What does the next point says? Now the next point will be focused on what aspect. What I'm going to start with is, guys, now we are going to start with the data. We are going to start with the data, but before I start with the data, I will be adding few more aspects with reference to the Indian economy. In reference to the Indian economy, I will add that Indian economy has performed really very well because Indian economy has eased out the supply chain pressure. So Indian economy has eased out the supply chain pressure. Indian economy has also softened the global commodity prices as well as agriculture production, which was pretty high in India, has supported India in the financial year 2024-25 in two ways. First side, due to increase in supply of the agriculture goods, prices, or I would say the food inflation has fallen down. First benefit. Second benefit is due to high production. India was in a situation to handle its inflation rates because the majority contribution in the CPI inflation rate comes from the food inflation itself, and if the food inflation is eased out, it will help in easing out the overall inflation rate of the country. So that is what you need to remember, that is commodity prices higher, agriculture production has helped India to ease out its inflation rates. Second point is export sector. Export sector has witnessed issues not only in India but all over the globe as the global trade has been impacted, but still I would say India's export sector was pretty good because we are depending on service export. And if we talk about the service sector, it is the only sector which is saving us in terms of GDP growth. It is saving us in terms of exports. It is saving us in terms of current account deficit. So exports were hit undoubtedly. Merchandise exports of the globe were hit undoubtedly, but the service exports were pretty high in context to India, which has supported the Indian economy in the right manner. However, India's participation in 14 free trade agreements as well as 6, note this point down, this is something which you need to remember. Guys, अगर आपको समझ आ रहा हो ये जो points मैं आपके साथ discuss कर रहा हूँ, what is the benefit of discussing these points? I want you to learn these new terms. I want you to understand these new terms so that when you will be writing a descriptive answer, you can use this information, you can use this concepts, you can use this learning to write a good descriptive answer. कि Indian economy का status क्या था for 24-25? If this kind of question is asked, you will be in the best position to answer it. So India is participating in 14 free trade agreements, 6 provincial trade agreements. Along with that, India is on the verge to sign new trade deals with US, Oman, European Union, which will support the international trade in the near future. Remember that India's exports, especially if I say service exports, and India's inward remittances. So India's export as well as India's inward remittances are savior because they are helping India to generate inward foreign currency, and this inward foreign currency helps India to pay its import bills. Undoubtedly, India is still in a situation of current account deficit, but this current account deficit is low. It is around 1.3% of GDP, and this value is so small just because of two reasons. One is high service exports as well as high inward remittance. I hope you all understand inward remittance का मतलब क्या होता है. Whenever someone or whenever an Indian citizen residing outside India, and that Indian citizen ये जो Indian citizens हैं, they are transferring funds to their family back in India so that the family can survive, family can live, family can make the expenditure. That amount which is transferred from outside India to the Indian residents for their utilization is known as remittance. And India is on the first rank on the globe. In terms of inward remittance, and India's inward remittance are more than $100 billion. Now I have a question for you guys. Share the data what is the value of inward remittance? What is the value of inward remittance for India? Do share the data in the comment section. That is going to be really very important. Done, guys. Moving ahead. Ciao. Now let's move on to the next point. Now the next point will include immense data. Please pay attention. So RBI is not going to calculate the global GDP estimates. What RBI has done, RBI has used the data which are presented by different organizations, and those reports have been referred in the annual report itself. और आरबीआई ने बहुत क्लियरली, बहुत ऑनेस्टली बताया कि फ्रॉम वेयर दे हैव टेकन विच डेटा, एंड दैट डेटा हैज बीन प्रेजेंटेड इन द रिपोर्ट. फॉर एग्जांपल इफ आई स्टार्ट माय डिस्कशन इज according to RBI estimate, global economy has grown by 3.3%. Global economy has grown by 3.3%, has grown by 3.3% in 2024, whereas the estimate was 3.7%, whereas the estimate was 3.7%. But this is not important. What is important, sir? Global economy has grown by what percent? So global economy has grown by 3.3%. Global economy has grown by what percent? So global economy has grown by 3.3%. First thing. Second point which is important in this particular context. Second point which is important in this particular context is what? So the second point which is important in this particular context is, according to IMF, global economy has grown by 3.3% in 2024. In 2025, it is going to grow by 2.8%, and in 2026, global economy is going to grow by 3%. So these are the three data which you need to remember with respect to global economy as given by IMF. So according to IMF, global growth was 3.3%, which was 3.5% in 2023, and it is pretty low in comparison to the historical average. So the historical average is पिछले 20 साल 2000 से लेकर 2019 तक there was an average growth of 3.7%. There was an average growth of 3.7%, but this time in 2023, global growth rate was 3.5%. In 2024, it fell down to 3.3%, and in 2025, the estimate is again low. It is 2.8%, and for 2026, we are estimating it around 3%. Now the question is, what are the reasons? So if a question is asked, maybe a MCQ or maybe in the paragraph based, if a question is asked that, sir, what are the reasons due to which we are expecting that the global growth rates are going to fall down, then the answer is, sir, due to the structural changes. Sir, what all structural changes you are talking about? So the first structural change is weak investment, not only in India but on the global level. Foreign investment has decreased. So why foreign investment has decreased? There is a genuine reason. There is a genuine reason for decrease in foreign investment, and that is tough domestic economies. So if the world economy is not doing well, that means individual domestic economies are also not doing well. So if my own domestic economy is not doing well, this is the nation from which I have my origin, from which I am basically earning the funds, and those earned funds are invested all over the globe. If my own country, my own origin country, or my company is not performing well back in its hometown, then it's quite obvious I will be looking after my investment very carefully. Either I will not invest or I'll invest less, and if I'm in a tough situation, I may go for disinvestment of my prior investments which have been done. Second point is slow productivity growth. So if we talk about the growth, especially the manufacturing sector, it is growing at a very slow rate all over the globe. So this is the other reason which is adding on to this slow economic growth rate. Last but not the least is high debt levels. As I said, the debt level of the countries are increasing a lot, and it has started increasing since COVID, and there is a situation for many of the countries, debt to GDP ratio is going to become 100%, which means these companies will not be even able to manage their debt. They will not be able to service their debts in the near future. So that is a tough thing which is coming up in the near future. So pace of economic activity was impacted by moderation in economic growth. So the pace of economic activities, that means the economic activities, they have slowed down due to moderation in economic growth in some of the Asian countries as well as in some of the European countries. If I talk about the reason behind this, Asian economies or the European economies, they have slowed down because of what? So they have slowed down because of geopolitical tension as well as sluggish recovery in China's consumption demand as well as China's property market, which is impacting the Asian economies, and that impact on the Asian and European economies is adding on to the slowdown of global economy in the world. Is it clear? So geopolitical tension, trade war, along with that sluggish recovery of the developed nations like China is adding on to the slow growth rate of the global economy. Moving on to the next point now. The next point is, after talking about the data on GDP, now I will be discussing two things. First, I will be discussing the global inflation rates. I'm just giving you a brief introduction right now of global inflation rates. Later, I will be discussing in much detail. So global inflation rates for 2024 were 5.7%, which has eased out in comparison to 2023, where the global inflation rate were 6.6%. Now the question is, so what are the reasons that this global inflation rate has fallen down over the period of time? So these global inflation rates have fallen down, or I would say they have been forced to fall down by the central banks of different economies with the help of their criterias, their policies, which we call it as monetary tightening. That means RBI, Federal Bank, they have increased the repo rates, and due to the increase in their repo rates and all, they have increased the policy rates, and due to the increase in policy rates, the money supply in the market has tightened, it has decreased over the period of time. So this is something which we need to remember. The next point which you need to remember is, for the global inflation rates for the year 2025, targets are 4.3%, and for 2026 the inflation target is 3.6%. So here it is decreasing, it's good. Then it is decreasing, this is also fine, but this further decrease is adding on a tension or a point of worry on the world, because if the inflation rates are decreasing, that means demand is going to decrease, that means consumption is going to decrease, that means it may impact the employment rates in the economy. Second point is trade. If I talk about the global trade, we all know that whenever we talk about trade, it includes two types of goods. One are goods, we call them as merchandise. These are the commodities, and the other one is the services which are traded all over the globe. Now, if I talk about the merchandise goods, so in that particular case, the global merchandise trade volume, it has expanded, or it has shown a growth of 2.9% in 2024. It has shown a growth of 2.9% in 2024. Why I'm happy with this? Because it was negative. That means it contracted in 2023. And don't be very happy. Why don't be very happy? Because in 2025, again, we are expecting it will contract by 0.2%. It will contract by what value, sir? It will contract by 0.2%. So global merchandise trade volume expanded by 2.9% in 2024 after contracting 1% in 2023. But if we focus for the next years, in 2025, it's going to contract again. By 2%, and in 2026 we are expecting a growth of 2.5%. Now you must be wondering, so do these datas are important? Yes guys, these datas are important. The actual datas which have been shared in the report, they are important with respect to the MCQ questions which can be asked, and these estimates which have been given under this particular report for the future, these estimates are really very important for you all, because while writing a descriptive answer you can use these datas in order to support your answer. Trust me guys, if you are writing a finance descriptive answer and while answering a finance descriptive question, if you are adding the data, the facts and the figures, this you have added the conceptual part, it's going to help you a lot. If you have added the conceptual part, it is going to help you a lot. ठीक है जी, क्लियर हो गया? चलो आगे बढ़े, अगले पॉइंट की ओर बढ़ते हैं. Moving on to the next point. Now the next point, as we have already discussed regarding the global inflation. Along with the global inflation, we have discussed about the global merchandise trades. I hope these 2 points are absolutely clear. Now with these 2 points, I would like to add few more things. Please pay attention. So this is the global merchandise trade alone. But if you talk about the global trade, first thing is global trade includes the service as well as merchandise. Merchandise has witnessed a growth of 2.9%. If I talk about the service growth, in case of service growth, there is a point that is 4%. There is a term that is 4%. But out of these two data, which data is very important? So the data which is very important is global trade growth. Global trade growth means sum of merchandise as well as services. This is known as total trade, which include import export of merchandise all over the globe, services import export all over the globe. That is basically known as global trade growth. So global trade growth has recovered to 3.8% in 2024, which was only 1% in 2023. So undoubtedly 2024 was a good year with respect to the merchandise trade, where we have witnessed a jump of 2.9% with respect to the previous contraction of 1%. In case of overall trade, we have witnessed a growth of 3.8% with respect to the growth rate of just 1% in 2023. This is the data which you need to remember. But there is a question. अब अगर कोई आपसे पूछे ग्लोबल ट्रेड को लेकर इतना ज्यादा डिस्कशन क्यों? कोई सर ग्लोबल ट्रेड इज नॉट डूइंग वेल. व्हाई इट इज नॉट डूइंग वेल सर? क्योंकि अगर आप देखें मर्केंडाइज ग्लोबल ट्रेड कम होने वाला है फॉर द करंट ईयर, दैट इज 2025. अब रीजंस क्या है? व्हाट आर द रीजंस बिकॉज ऑफ व्हिच वी आर एक्सपेक्टिंग द ग्लोबल ट्रेड टू फॉल डाउन, global merchandise trade to fall down? So the reason is global trade flows, however, continue to be confronted by, still we have the issues like global geoeconomic fragmentation as well as restrictive trade policies. These are the reasons. Geoeconomic fragmentations and restrictive trade policies are the reasons which are hampering the growth of merchandise trade or overall trade in the economy. Clear है जी? समझ आ गया? चलो, moving on to the next point. Now, after discussing about inflation, after discussing about merchandise trade, after discussing about service trade, after discussing about the global trade, now I will be moving ahead to the next point. The next point says US dollar has maintained, or it has maintained consistency in terms of its value, consistent value in the given financial year or in the given year. The reason behind is all the economies, they were impacted because of the geoeconomic fragmentation, because of the geopolitical tensions, because of the trade war and whatnot. But US dollar value has remained consistent, which has eventually dominated the advanced economies as well as emerging economies. Along with this, the global financial conditions, they have remained accommodative in major advanced economies, which has reflected shift towards less restrictive policies, because most of the economies, they have reduced their policy rates in order to increase the flow of money supply in the economy, in order to increase the inflation rates, in order to increase the demand, so that the growth can be witnessed in the respective economy. So two things which are very important: global condition remained largely accommodative in major advanced economies, which has reflected shift towards less restrictive policies to boost economic activity as inflation started gradually converging to the target level. So जैसे जैसे inflation कम हो रही थी, उस inflation को कम होता देख अब इकोनॉमीज का कंसर्न इन्फ्लेशन कंट्रोल करना नहीं था, अब इकोनॉमीज का कंसर्न था टू अचीव द ग्रोथ रेट. सो इन ऑर्डर टू अचीव द ग्रोथ रेट, दीज इकोनॉमीज दे हैव लूजन अप their monetary policies in order to increase the money supply in the market. And as I said, US dollar remained strong throughout the year, which has increased the pressure on this advanced economies as well as emerging economies of the country. अब इसी report में they have mentioned about Brazil. Why they have mentioned about Brazil? Because you might have heard about G20. You might have heard about G20. So it is a group of 20 nations. Yes or no? G20 is a group of 20 nations. नाम से तो यही समझ आ रहा है, नाम से तो यही समझ आ रहा है, और हर जगह बोलते भी यही है. जब भी कभी आप पढ़ो सुनो किसी भी वीडियो में तो यही बोलते हैं, G20 summit, G20 is a group of 20 nations. Is this point clear? Is this point correct? My answer would be no, sir. This point is not correct, because actually when we talk about G20, it includes 19 countries. It includes 19 sovereign countries as its member, and we have one more, that is European Union. So in total we have 20 members, out of which 19 are sovereign countries and one is the European Union, which we need to remember. And recently in 2024, the chairmanship or the presidential, or I would say the headship of G20, that is presidency of G20, is shifted from India to Brazil, as India has completed its presidency tenure of 1 year. Before this, we had Indonesia. Indonesia was the president of G20. Now it was shifted to India in 2023, and now it has been shifted to Brazil in 2024. So in this case, they call it as Global South Troika. So what is this Global South Troika? So it basically means the southern nations, Indonesia, India and Brazil, they have taken up the G20 presidency from past 3 years. Earlier was Indonesia, then India, and now it has been forwarded to Brazil, and next presidency will be transferred into the hands of South Africa. Next presidency will be transferred into the hands of South Africa. Is this clear, guys? Is this clear? So this is something which is very important. Direct question can be asked. Second point which can be asked related to this is, so Brazil has assumed the presidency from India for 2023-24, and what is the theme? So the theme is, under the presidency of Brazil, G20 is targeting building a world. G20 is targeting building a world and a sustainable planet. Building a just world and a sustainable planet. That is the theme which you need to remember. Again, very important. Then along with this, Brazil presidency has prioritized 3 key areas on which they will be working with the help of G20 nations, with the help of G20 group, to achieve certain targets. So the first area is to fight against hunger, poverty, poverty as well as inequality. Second priority area is advancing the 3 dimensions of sustainable development, which means economic, social and environmental. So advance the 3 dimensions in order to achieve the social development, that is economic, social and environmental. Last but not the least priority is reforming global governance structures. So these are the 3 priority areas which have been highlighted. These are the 3 priority areas which have been highlighted under the presidency of Brazil for G20. If this point is clear, just give me yes, sir. If this point is clear, just give me yes sir so that I can move ahead. If this point is clear, just give me yes sir so that I can move ahead. Is it done, guys? Shall I move ahead? Okay, moving on to the next point. What does the next point says? So the next point is now the starting of domestic economy. The next part is now the starting of domestic economy. But before I discuss with you the domestic economy, I have an important information which I would like to add, that is related to global equity market. That is basically related to global equity market. So let me add that information as well. Please pay attention on the screen. I'm just removing my image. Global equity market has witnessed volatility, and this volatility is because of few reasons. First one is overvaluation. So some of the companies like Nvidia and all, they were overvalued. Then divergent monetary policies in the countries. Some countries are going with hard monetary policy, some are going with loose monetary policy. Then we have slower pace of disinflation. What is disinflation? So disinflation means when the inflation rates are positive but they are decreasing with respect to the previous year. So there is a slow pace of disinflation. Then geopolitical risk is hampering, or it is somehow forcing the investors not to invest in the different companies, in the different countries. Uncertainty on the tariff policies has also led to the slowdown of the global equity market. No one is willing, no one is trying to invest. No one is willing, no one is trying to invest in the equity market in the past 2024. Moving on to the next. So it says that beside the tough time which has been witnessed all over the globe, India has still performed pretty well in comparison to the global average because of our macroeconomic fundamentals as well as proactive policy measures, and sustained government capital expenditure has supported India in order to make India self-sufficient, self-capable to sustain the tough times which was hitting the entire globe. The next point is, so India was strong, but how can you how can you add assurance to these words? I can add assurance to these words with the help of the GDP rates. So real GDP growth rate of India, undoubtedly it has moderated. It has moderated to 6.5%, which is low in comparison to the last year, because in last year the GDP growth estimate was GDP growth value was 9.2%. In that context, we can always say that the growth rate of India has slowed down in comparison to the previous year. That is true, but in comparison to the global level, or on the global level, India is still the fastest. India is still the fastest growing major economy of the world. And why India is the global or fastest growing major economy in the world? So there are three reasons. First one, we have improved in our consumption demand. How we have improved in our consumption demand? So recently government has decreased the tax rates, and the decrease in these tax rates done by the government will undoubtedly increase the capacity of Indian public to consume more, because decrease in tax rate means increase in disposable income, and that personal disposable income will be obviously used for the process of consumption. And if consumption increases, it results in increase in demand. This increase in demand will push the economy to grow. This will result in increase in GDP of the economy. Second point is net exports on the expenditure side. So if I talk about the net exports, If I talk about the net exports has also supported Indian economy during this time. And last but not the least is service sector, the savior of Indian economy, along with that recovery of agriculture production on the supply side. So these are the three areas which has supported the Indian economy during the tough time, due to which India was able to achieve a GDP growth rate of 6.5%. First one, I repeat, improvement of consumption, या फिर I would say improvement in consumption demand. Second is improvement in consumption, which has supported the demand side. Then net export on the expenditure side, and increase in service sector, or I would say increase in output of the service sector, increase in agriculture production has supported the Indian economy, on the supply side. Global economy is steady due to tightening money supply, and also said economic policy is less restrictive. Please clear the difference. Okay, Schedule, the point is, when we talk about the past, during COVID, every nation was borrowing and making huge expense in their country in order to increase the liquidity in the market. But that increase in liquidity during COVID has resulted in increase in money supply in their economies, because of which demand increased, because of which inflation increased, and inflation was increasing, and it has crossed the upper, or I would say it has crossed the upper ceiling limit of the control inflation range. So in order to overcome this situation, every economy started tightening their monetary policy so that money supply can be decreased in order to control the inflation rates. So firstly, every economy was, during 2020, every economy was increasing the money supply in the market. Then they started tightening the monetary policy, and due to this tighten in monetary policy, we have witnessed that inflation rates have come into the control range, but the growth estimates has decreased a lot, due to which economies are now following the criteria which you have said, that is economic policy is less restrictive. तो ये दोनों चीजें हुई, पहले ये हुआ, उसकी वजह से चीजें, या आप कहो कि ग्रोथ रेट कम हुए, अब ग्रोथ रेट को ज्यादा करने के लिए दे हैव डिक्रीज दैट restrictions, they have decreased their economic restrictions so that they can enhance the trade, they can enhance the demand, they can enhance the production. This was done just to target the inflation rates, and now this is done to target the growth rate, because now inflation is not a point of worry, because inflation all over the globe as well as in most of the economies is in the controlled range. Is this point clear, Schedule? If this point is clear, just give me yes sir, so that I can move ahead. Moving on to the next point. Schedule, I'm waiting for your reply. If it is clear, just give me yes sir, so that I can move ahead. The next point I have is real GVA. How many of you are aware of this word GVA, that is gross value addition? And one side we have GDP, gross domestic product. Guys, what is gross domestic product? So it is the value of final goods and services produced and provided within the geographical area of the nation in one financial year. We call it as GDP. The term I said, value. Value means price. We have two prices. One is the factor cost and the other one is the market price. What is market price? So the price paid by the consumer. What is factor cost? So the price received by the producer. Price received by the producer. So generally the relationship is factor cost plus indirect tax, which is charged by the government, minus if subsidy is given by the government to the seller, is equals to market price. So when you calculate GDP at market price, you generally call it as GDP only, and whenever on a particular document, if it is written only GDP, it basically means GDP at market price. But what if we calculate the GDP at factor cost? So the GDP at factor cost is termed as gross value addition, which basically means we calculate the value, we calculate the GDP with the help of gross valuation method, which basically means, let's say there is a nation in which we have 4 individuals. An example here, just to explain you, we have 4 individuals in a nation, and for that particular nation, for that particular nation, you are calculating the GDP. You are calculating the GDP. So individual 1, individual 2, individual 3, individual 4. Individual 1 is farmer who is producing wheat. Individual 2 is, let's say, flour mill owner who is converting wheat into flour. Individual 3 is, let's say, baker who is converting flour into bread. And individual 4 is cake maker. I know baker and cake maker are same. Chalo alag alag le lo. He converts bread into cake. He converts bread into cake. Now, in this case, we take two values. One is the input value. So if I say input value of the farmer is 0, that means farmer has his own land, seed is free of cost, pesticide is free of cost, so input cost is 0. And he has cultivated a wheat of value 5 rupees. So this is the output value. Now this 5 rupees of wheat is purchased by flour mill owner. He has converted it into flour, and the value of flour is 15. So wheat value increases from 5 to 15 due to the services done by flour mill owner, because they have converted the wheat into flour. This is known as value addition. This is known as value addition. Now this 15 rupees of flour is converted into bread, let's say of 30 rupees. 30 rupees of bread is converted into 50 rupees of cake. Now if someone asks me what is the GDP value, so GDP basically means the value of final goods and services. So what is the final good over here? So the final good is cake. So value of GDP of this nation is 50 rupees. You can calculate in this manner, or you can calculate with the help of value addition. So at every step, what is the value addition? So first step, by farmer, value addition is of 5 rupees. By flour mill owner, value addition is of 10 rupees. By baker, value addition is of 15. And by cake maker, value addition is of 20. Now you check it. 5 plus 10, 15, 15 plus 15, 30, 30 plus 20 is 50. So this is also a method to calculate GDP. But now the GDP which you have obtained, that is GDP at factor cost, or we call it as gross value addition. Is this point clear? Is this point clear? If it is clear, just give me yes sir, so that I can remove the content and I can discuss the respective point for which this concept has been discussed with you. जल्दी से बता दो अगर ये clear है. चलो बहुत बढ़िया. Let me, now I'm talking about GVA. So gross value addition for Indian economy, GVA for Indian economy is 6.4% for the financial year 24-25, with respect to the high growth in the previous year, which was 8.6%, in the financial year 2023-24. So this increase in GVA is because of three sectors, because we basically divide our economy into three sectors. One is primary sector, I'm writing it as agriculture sector, then we have manufacturing sector, and then we have service sector. Please pay attention. In case of agriculture sector and allied activities, we have recorded growth rate of 4.6% in 2024-25, and growth in the industrial sector was moderate, 4.3%. Overall growth is 6.4%. How is it possible? Sir, it is possible because of our savior, and the Indian economy savior is the service sector, as I said earlier. So service sector has grown by 7.5%. And if you talk about the contribution, then the highest contribution in GDP is coming from service sector, and the value of contribution is 64.1%. तो भैया सबसे ज्यादा अगर सर्विस सेक्टर कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है और सबसे ज्यादा ग्रोथ रेट सर्विस सेक्टर में है, तो ऑब्वियसली योर इकोनॉमी विल ग्रो at a high rate in comparison to the other two sectors. देखो एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर का कंट्रीब्यूशन जीडीपी में कम है, it is acceptable because it is a low, I would say low good producing sector where the value of goods is pretty low, but manufacturing sector is not able to grow just because of overgrown service sector of the Indian economy, because of the overgrown service sector of the Indian economy. ठीक है जी, क्लियर हो गया ये पॉइंट, आसान था, समझ आया. Let's move ahead. let's move ahead. Just give me yes sir. So these three things are really very important. Don't worry कि भैया ये वाली चीजें आपने स्क्रीन पर तो लिखी नहीं सर. Don't worry, I have written all the things on the screen. Here you go. देख लो सारी चीजें वही एक एक करके पढ़ा देता हूं. So real gross value addition for India is 6.4% growth has been witnessed, or real GVA growth is 6.4% with respect to 8.6% in the last year. Next point which is important, agriculture and allied sector has witnessed a growth of 4.6% in comparison to 2.7% growth in the last year. Why this year the growth was high? Because of the record food grain production, which was aided by adequate reservoir level as well as favorable weather conditions. Second is growth in the industrial sector. Manufacturing sector was moderate, 4.3%. Two reasons. First reason is base effect, because last year manufacturing sector has grown a lot. So if you are comparing the growth to the already grown financial year, then obviously this growth rate cannot be very high. So it's 4.3%, which is decent. And on the other side, muted demand, that means demand for the manufacturing goods has decreased over the period of time. Along with this, public sector continued to superhit the investment growth, as well as the production linked incentive scheme has supported the growth of the economy. It has reached 57% of its committed target. That means PLI, production linked incentive scheme, is doing really very well. It's doing really very well, and due to this scheme itself, we have witnessed a growth rate of 4.3%. And now comes the savior, 7.5%, and its contribution is highest, 64.1%. If someone asks me GDP contribution, so highest GDP contribution is done by tertiary sector, then the contribution is done by secondary sector or manufacturing sector, and last is done by the primary sector. So this is the contribution of three sectors in the Indian GDP, and highest contribution is done by the tertiary sector, which is a good call. But point to worry is this high growing or fast growing service sector is not letting the manufacturing sector to grow in India, because of which still we are facing the situation or the problems of unemployment, which I will be discussing with you in some time. The next point is India remained focused on its climate change mitigation as well as adaptation measures. India ranked in top 10 high performers for the 6th year in the row since 2020 as per Climate Change Performance Index 2025. This is very important. अब अगर इंडिया के रोल या इंडिया का क्लाइमेट चेंज के अगेंस्ट क्या रोल है, व्हाट इज द स्टेटस ऑफ इंडिया विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द क्लाइमेट चेंज, हाउ इंडिया इज ट्राइंग इट्स लेवल बेस्ट टू मिटिगेट द क्लाइमेट चेंज issues or to adapt the climate change issues, then I would say India is doing really very well, because since 2020 India is in the list of top 10 performing countries which are trying their level best to mitigate or to adapt the climate change measures. So as per the Climate Change Performance Index 2025, India was on the 10th rank. But before I move on to the next slide, I would like to discuss more about this CCPI. Why I want to discuss more about this? Because अगर कोई question यहाँ से directly ना आकर indirectly आया, तो obviously ये point उसी पे आएगा जब हम CCPI पे अगर क्वेश्चन आएगा तो हम तभी सॉल्व कर पाएंगे जब हमारे पास उसकी इंफॉर्मेशन है. डोंट वरी येलो, आई हैव द एमसीक्यूज, यू नीड टू वेट फॉर सम टाइम. पहले पढ़ा तो दूं, तभी तो क्वेश्चन सॉल्व कर पाएंगे. सो जस्ट स्टे विद मी. I have many questions and important questions which are going to help you. But for that, you need to be a bit patient and you need to stay with me. Here you go with the entire detail. देखो जरा. Climate Change Performance Index evaluates the climate protection performance of 63 countries as well as European Union collectively, which these countries are responsible for the 90% of the global greenhouse gas emission. This was first published in 2005 and India is in the list of top 10 performers since 2020. Who publishes it? Sir, it is published by It is published by German Watch, New Climate Institute and Climate Action Network. Sir, in order to rank the nations, there are 4 categories on the basis of which countries are analyzed, and this analysis is further divided, or I would say these categories, they are further measured using 14 specific indicators. So what all these categories are? First, greenhouse gas emission done by a nation, weightage is 40% in the overall score. Renewable energy, weightage is 20%. Energy use, weightage is 20%. Climate policy, weightage is 20%. So it's very easy to remember. Greenhouse gas cause करता है pollution, उसी की वजह से सबसे ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम है, तो सबसे ज्यादा वेटेज उसी को दे दी 40%. उसके अलावा एनर्जी यूज, रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी और क्लाइमेट पॉलिसी को 20-20% का क्या दे दिया, वेटेज दे दिया. अगर हम बात करें 2025 की रैंकिंग की, तो 2025 की रैंकिंग में फर्स्ट 3 स्पॉट्स, फर्स्ट रैंक, सेकंड रैंक, थर्ड रैंक, ये सर वेकेंट है. दैट मींस नो कंट्री इज कैपेबल इनफ टू बी रैंक्ड फर्स्ट, सेकंड और थर्ड. The topmost rank is given to a nation, that is Denmark, and Denmark has been ranked 4th. So Denmark is on the 4th place in the ranking which has been done, and this is the highest rank of all out of all the countries surveyed, and no nation was made or no nation was capable to be ranked from 1 to 3rd. Next point I have is, which is really very important, overall only 22 out of 64. This is very important, guys. This is something which you need to mark down. Out of 64, only 22 countries are on track. Only 22 countries are on track. Rest 42 countries, they are lagging. Rest 42 countries, they are lagging. तो याद रखिएगा, out of these 64 countries or 64 members, 63 countries plus European Union, only and only 22 are on track to achieve the targets related to climate change. 42 countries are lagging. If I talk about India, sir, India was on the 10th rank in this 2025 ranking. Despite the positive development in renewable energy, India is still really dependent on coal energy, because of which India slipped down to the 10th rank. Earlier, India was performing much better than the 10th rank. Is this point clear? पूरा clear हो गया? अब अगर CCPI पे कोई क्वेश्चन आएगा, तो I'm pretty sure you will be in a position to answer that question in the examination. If it is clear, give me a thumbs up so that I can move ahead. Guys, if you haven't liked the session yet, I would request you quickly hit the like button. If you haven't shared the session yet, I would request you quickly share the link of this session with your friends so that more and more students, they can join us live in this particular session itself. Chalo ji. Moving on to the next point. Now, with respect to the climate change, we have 2-3 more points which I would like to cover with you. So first point we have already discussed. Second is renewable energy capacity addition was highest during the financial year 24-25, led by solar energy, with more than 10 lakh households installing solar roof panels under Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. I hope you know this. Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. Under this, government has come up with a scheme where government is supporting the household families to purchase the solar panels, install them on their rooftops, use the solar energy produced, and rest of the energy can even be sold in order to earn returns, in order to earn profit. So as per the current data in financial year 2024-25, this financial year we have witnessed highest addition in the renewable energy capacity increase. Highest addition in the renewable energy capacity increase. First point which is important. The second point which is important is more than 10 lakh households have been covered under Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana. Second is due to green steel mission as well as due to critical mineral mission which were launched by the government, along with that national green hydrogen mission which has been promoted by the government. These are the reasons, along with Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, which has led to the highest capacity addition in renewable energy capacity of the country in the financial year 24-25. The next point is again really very important. So government is trying its level best to promote clean transportation in the country. Prime Minister Electric Drive Revolution in innovative vehicle enhancement. So e-drive scheme has been launched. and this E-Drive scheme stands for Electric Drive Revolution in Innovative Vehicle Enhancement Scheme, which focuses on green mobility, development of electric vehicle manufacturing ecosystem to achieve the target. So what is the target? So the target is 30% of electric vehicle adoption by 2030. So by 2030, we have set a target that by 2030, 30%. By 2030, 30% of the vehicles adopted should be electric vehicles in the country. So this is something which you need to remember. I would say these all 4 points are really very important, which can be asked in the MCQ as well as in the descriptive format. Now we'll talk about the inflation status of the Indian economy. If I talk about the inflation status of the Indian economy, then I would say yes, India has first during COVID, India has witnessed the same scenario. During COVID, India increased the money supply, which led to the increase in inflation rates. And then the inflation rates were very high. In order to counter these inflation rates, Government of India has tightened its fiscal policy. RBI has tightened its monetary policy, where RBI has increased the repo rate, and due to the immense increase in repo rate and other measures like open market operation, inflation rate started falling down. It was good, but the problem arises when the inflation rate was falling down and it entered into the control range of 2 to 6%. But the problem is inflation rates are now in the control range, but growth of the nation has decreased, or growth estimates were not looking achievable. So for example, India first came up with the growth estimate of 7%, and later on it revised to 6.3%. So due to this decrease in growth estimates, in order to push the economy, in order to target the growth rates of the country, banks as well as I would say RBI as well as Government of India has came up with loosening up the monetary and fiscal policy, where RBI has decreased the repo rate in February 2025. Almost after 2 years, it was cut down by 25 basis point. Then in April, it was cut by 25 basis point again. Not only this, in December 2024, RBI has decreased the cash reserve ratio by 50 basis point just to support the economy, just to increase the money supply in the market, so that if the money supply in the market increases, this results in increase in demand. Due to increase in demand, inflation will increase, but over the period of time, this increase in demand will increase the pressure on the production houses, which will push the production to increase. It will result in increase in GDP, it will result in increase in income, it will result in increase in employment in the economy. So keeping that in mind, inflation converged closer towards the target, that is within the control range, which aided easing input cost pressures. It has led to the proactive supply management measures which has been taken by the government in continuing transmission of the monetary policy actions. Now, headline inflation moderated. So right now, I'm talking about this phase when inflation is decreasing. I'm not talking about this phase, because this phase is majorly in 2025. We are concerned about 2024. So in 2024, we will be majorly focusing on the fall in inflation rates. So that is basically targeted in our discussion. So headline inflation. What is headline inflation? So the inflation which is basically taken as a base to elaborate inflation scenarios in the country. So right now, CPI combined is the headline inflation. This is the same inflation rate which is targeted by RBI. This is the same inflation rate for which RBI tried to achieve the range of 2 to 6%. RBI tries to achieve the range of 2 to 6%. So headline inflation moderated to an average of 4.6%. And what is the control range? So control range is 2 to 6%, or we write it as 4% plus minus 2%. So it means it was almost close to the controlled inflation range, which was earlier 5.4% in the previous year. Why this inflation rate has fallen down? So this inflation rate has fallen down due to decrease in core inflation. Core inflation means inflation excluding food and fuel items. So if you exclude food and fuel item, you calculate the inflation that is known as core inflation, and core inflation has decreased down to a value of 3.5%. Core inflation was decreased down to a value of what? So core inflation was decreased down to a value of 3.5%. And not only this, there was a deflation in fuel. Deflation in fuel means there was decrease in price of fuel by 2.5%. So due to the deflation in fuel as well as due to the fall in core inflation rate, the overall inflation rates have fallen down, or they have reached to a value of 5.6%. They have reached to a value of 5.6%. If it is clear till this point, just give me yes, sir. If it is clear till this point, just give me yes, sir, so that I can move ahead. Quickly, guys, keep on replying in the comment section. If it is clear till this point, give me a thumbs up, give me yes, sir, so that we can move ahead. Done? Okay. Moving on to the next point. The next point says uptick in the core inflation. So after, I would say, in the second half of the year, that is in the second half of the financial year 2024-25, we have witnessed that core inflation has witnessed an uptick. That means it has started increasing, and this has started increasing because of increase in international gold prices. As you know, international gold prices have increased up to what value since 2024, or I would say since August 2024, these gold prices, they have increased at a very fast rate. An upward revision in the mobile charges by the private telecom company has also pushed the service inflation. Then deflation in the fuel was driven by reduction in LPG as well as kerosene prices on the back of softer global energy prices. So why deflation in fuel was witnessed? So deflation in fuel was witnessed due to the reason. Deflation in fuel was witnessed due to the reason. What was the reason? So the reason is fall in LPG, that is liquefied petroleum gas prices, as well as kerosene prices. Last is very important. This point is really very important. Food inflation remained high, that is 6.7% in 2024-25. It has also reached to a peak of 9.7% in October 2024 before declining dramatically to 2.9% in March 2025. Scenario देखो क्या है, अगर आप 2024-25 फाइनेंशियल ईयर के एवरेज की बात करोगे तो एवरेज इज 6.7% in case of food inflation. पीक कितना गया फूड इन्फ्लेशन का? 9.7%. लोएस्ट कितना गया फूड इन्फ्लेशन? 2.9%. दिस इज मार्च 2025, दिस इज अक्टूबर 2024 एंड दिस इज फॉर द फाइनेंशियल ईयर 2024-25. समझ आई बात? समझ आया? क्लियर हुआ? याद रखना. आगे बढ़ते हैं. अब बात आती है आरबीआई की. सर आरबीआई ने क्या क्या स्टेप्स लिए इन द पास्ट टू कंट्रोल द इकोनॉमी? सो सिस्टम लिक्विडिटी, जो इंडिया के सिस्टम में लिक्विडिटी थी, इट वाज सरप्लस ड्यूरिंग जुलाई टू नवंबर 2024 एंड देन वी नो दैट इन दिसंबर देयर वाज अ डेफिसिट, और दिसंबर से लेकर मार्च तक देयर वाज अ डेफिसिट इन द सिस्टम बिकॉज ऑफ व्हिच आरबीआई केम अप विद परचेज ऑफ गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज फ्रॉम द मार्केट, ताकि मार्केट में मनी सप्लाई बढ़ाई जाए. आरबीआई परचेज्ड US dollars from the market in order to increase the money supply in the market. RBI provided loan and financial assistance to the banks in order to increase the money supply in the hands of the bank in order to fight this in order to fight the crisis that we call it as what? So we call it as liquidity crisis. Along with this, considering the growth inflation dynamics, monetary policy changed the policy stance. So we have changed our stance from accommodative to neutral. Accommodative stance का मतलब क्या था? Either we will be holding the policy rates constant or we will be increasing them. But now we have moved, RBI moved on to the neutral one. What is this neutral one? So neutral one basically means that as per the requirement, if needed, RBI can either increase or decrease or maintain the policy rates constant. So that is basically known as neutral monetary policy stance. Why does an increase in gold price? Because in core inflation we do not include food, we do not include fuel. Food fuel है नहीं, तो उसमें जो सबसे important commodity है which impact the inflation rates in the category of core inflation is gold. So if the gold price is increasing, it will obviously impact the rates of core inflation. Monetary policy has reduced the policy rate and reduced the CRR to provide the durable liquidity. Now I'm talking about 2024-25 के बाद क्या हुआ in the end of the financial year due to the tightened liquidity situation in the economy. RBI has loosened up its monetary policy in order to increase the money supply in the market. RBI conducted market operations which included purchase of government securities through open market operation. RBI went into US dollar INR buy sell swap agreement. What is this? RBI said that I am ready to purchase US dollar from the banks against rupees, and I will be swapping it same, or I will be swapping it back after 3 years. मतलब आज RBI कह रहा है बैंक को, you give me your US dollars, take INR from me, and after 3 years I will be swapping back your US dollars against the INR. So this will help banks to generate more liquidity so that liquidity issues can be overcome. Domestic equity. Now, as we discussed global equity market, now we are talking about domestic equity market. So domestic equity market has witnessed an increase in the first half, scaling fresh peaks before declining in the second half. Concerns over the slowdown in the GDP growth rate, corporate earnings growth, tariff policy uncertainty and whatnot. तो जैसा कि हम जानते हैं कि in the first half of the financial year, your stock market was doing well, but if you are an active investor in the stock market, तो obviously आपका portfolio अभी भी red होगा. लेकिन उसके पीछे का reason क्या है? So the reason is steep fall down, which we have witnessed in the second half of the financial year, and still Indian economy is trying to recover out of it. Indian stock market is trying to recover out of it. The reasons were situation of crisis or recession in US, which led to the outflow of foreign portfolio investment, which led to the immense increase of supply of financial instruments in the economy, due to which their price fell down and the entire stock market has witnessed a fall down. Now after this fall down, there was a new announcement came, that is Donald Trump tariffs, I would say US tariffs. Now we were just trying to cope up with this tariff wali news, then there came out to be a new news, that is Operation Sindoor. अब Operation Sindoor के बाद एक और नई news आ गई है, COVID-19 is again spreading in the country. So these are some of the reasons which are not letting the share market to bounce back, but still it is growing, it is coming back, but not to the original level, but not to the initial levels. Here comes the most important information. Now I will be discussing about employment. फिर चाहे नाबार्ड हो, चाहे सेबी हो, चाहे RBI हो, कोई भी एग्जामिनेशन हो, एम्प्लॉयमेंट रिलेटेड न्यूज हर बार पूछी ही जाती है. तो याद रखिएगा, एज पर द एनुअल पीरियोडिक फोर्स सर्वे डेटा, labor market remained resilient during January to December 2024 as per the RBI Annual Report. Second point says, agriculture sector share in total employment has decreased in 2024. So share in total employment of the agriculture sector has decreased, but on the other side, share of service sector, construction sector and trade sector has increased. So remember that if someone asks you, name the 3 sectors which have witnessed increase in labor, labor contribution, increase in employment contribution, then answer would be services, construction, trade. But agriculture sector, the share in the total employment has decreased in 2024. Urban periodic labor force survey data shown October to December, a robust employment situation in the urban area, so there's nothing to worry. But labor force participation rate and worker population ratio increased during 2023-24, which is a good news, and making their highest level since its inspection. Now, what does this all news about? Guys, if I ask you, what do you understand by the word labor participation, labor force participation rate? What is the meaning of worker population rate? And what is the meaning of unemployment rate? Can you give me the answer? Anyone can give me the answer. What is the formula? You can say labor force participation rate. What is the formula? The formula of labor force participation rate is number of people in labor force. It is number of people in labor force divided by total population. Now, if someone asks you what is labor force, then what will be your answer? So, labor force include everyone who is employed or actively seeking employment. So it includes employed as well as who is seeking for employment. Seeking for employment means I'm talking about the population in the working age group. First, population in the working age group, first condition. Second is capable to work. Second is willing to work. And third is qualified to work. Fourth is ready to work on the given wages. So these are known as seeking for employment. For example, if you're filling the RBI Grade B form, you are the part of seeking for employment because you are ready to work on the given wages in the given organization. So I add the individuals who are employed, I add the individual who are seeking for employment. This is total labor force divided by total population. What is working population rate? So working population rate means employment or employed population divided by total population. Employed population divided by total population. And last is what is unemployment rate? What is unemployment rate? Any idea, guys? What is unemployment rate? Sir, unemployment rate means unemployed. Unemployment rate means unemployed divided by total population? No. It's not divided by total population. It is divided by labor force. It is divided by labor force. So these are the three formulas. So now coming back to the point, labor force participation rate has increased, which is a good sign. That means more individuals are willing to work, more are getting the job opportunities. Working population participation ratio is increasing. That means with respect to total population, working population count is also increasing, which is a good call for an economy. If I talk about the unemployment rate, sir, unemployment rate has remained same. It was same 3.2% in 2023-24. It is same 3.2% in 2024-25. As you can see on the screen, this red color, this is your unemployment rate. But on the other side, labor force participation rate has increased, as well as if you see worker population ratio, that has also increased. Not only this, the proportion of self-employed, that means businessmen who are setting up their startups, who are opening up their own companies in the workforce, has been increasing consistently since 2018-19, while the share of casual labor is on decline. If I talk about the share of regular wage or salaried employee, so it has improved to 21.7% from 20.9% in 2022-23. So 23-24 it has improved to 21.7%, but still it is declining. But if I talk about the self-employed, so the percentage of self-employed individuals in the country is increasing, which is a good sign. That is the reason India is developing, or Indian economy is promoting startup schemes or the startup initiatives and whatnot. Now I will be discussing the government data very quickly. This we have covered during budget. So gross fiscal deficit has declined to 4.7%, which was earlier, as per budget estimate, it was 4.9%. In the budget estimate, it was 4.9%, but now it has been revised, and the revised value is 4.7%, which is a good call. Because if the value, or I would say if the fiscal deficit is decreasing, that means fiscal deficit is the value which government is going to borrow in order to manage its budget, in order to balance its budget. So if fiscal deficit is decreasing, it's quite obvious your economy is performing well, and it has decreased from 4.9% to 4.7%. But if I compare it to the previous year, so previously it was 5.5%, now it has decreased to 4.7%, which is showing a good sign. Moving to the next, effective capital expenditure has registered a growth of 5.2%. What is effective capital expenditure? So capital expenditure which is done by the government for the infrastructure growth and development plus grant given by central government to the state government, grants given by central government to the state government for infrastructure development, So capital expenditure done by government on infrastructure and the grants given by central government to the state government for the development of infrastructure, that total is known as effective capital expenditure, and this effective capital expenditure has registered a growth of 5.2%. Last year this growth was 19.8%. On the other side, if I talk about the revenue expenditure, so revenue expenditure has witnessed a growth of 5.8%. But if I talk about the representation of effective capital expenditure with respect to GDP, then my answer would be 4% of GDP. 4% of GDP was effective capital expenditure for 2024-25, and 4% of GDP, 4.3% of GDP will be the effective capital expenditure for the financial year 2025-26. So this is again the data which you need to remember. On the receipt side, gross tax, non-tax receipts. Non-tax receipt means profits received from RBI, profit received from PSUs, fees, fines which are collected by the government, grant, aid which is received by the government, they all are non-tax receipts. So non-tax receipts as well as gross tax, they have witnessed recorded growth of 11.2% and 32.2% respectively, which means gross tax has grown by 11.2% and non-tax receipts has grown by 32.2%, and these two growths were the recorded growth for the financial year 2024-25. If I talk about the consolidated gross fiscal deficit of the states, मतलब सारी states का fiscal deficit अगर मैं add कर दूं तो that is 3.2% of the country's GDP, which is appropriate, which is within the range, which is within the control range. Reserve Bank of India has also revised ways and means limits of the state government and union territories. This limit has been revised to 60,000 crore, which was earlier 47,000 crore. So this limit was revised from 1st July 2024. This figure is important, that can be asked in the examination. Mark it down, and in the comment section you need to give me what is the WMA limit announced by RBI for 2025-26. I have discussed this with you in the previous sessions. So my question is, what is the WMA limit announced by RBI for state governments for the financial year 2025-26? Then if I talk about the India's merchandise exports, so India's merchandise exports have witnessed a growth of only 0.1% in this financial year in comparison to the contraction of 3.1% in the past. So अगर merchandise exports की बात करें, if it is positive, that is good for an economy, but it is only 0.1% positive with respect to the previous year, because previous year we have recorded a contraction of 3.1%. But on the other side, if I see the merchandise imports, so merchandise imports have grown by 6.2%. They have grown by 6.2% during the period, as against the contraction of 5.3% a year ago. So last year merchandise import were contracted by 5.3%, but now from this contraction we have witnessed a growth which is not good of 6.2%, due to which merchandise trade deficit is $282.8 billion, which was $241.1 billion in the past. Is this point clear, guys? Do give me this answer in the comment section after the video. Do type all the answers for the questions which I have asked you after this session in the comment section. Fine, guys? Okay. Chalo ji. Let's move on to the next point. The next point says current account deficit. So the current account deficit, which is supported by India's service exports or service trade, which is positive. It is supported by inward remittance because they all come under the current account. So in current account, we have import exports, we have inward remittances, then we have grants and aids which are flowing in, and many more. But this inward remittance and service export or service trade, which is positive, that is basically supporting, or that is basically helping the India to counter merchandise trade deficit, because of which our current account deficit is still existing, but it is low. It is just 1.3% of the GDP. Net foreign direct investment. Net foreign direct investment. What is net? So net means whatever inflow has come, out of which what amount has been flown out. So incoming minus outgoing is equals to net inflow. So net FDI is just $0.4 billion during the financial year 24-25, which is lower than the net FDI in the previous year of $10.1 billion. On the other side, if I talk about FPI recorded net inflows of only $1.7 billion, which was $41.6 billion in the last year. So as you can see easily, these are the reasons which has shaken up the Indian economy. Low or less inward flow of foreign direct investment, as well as less inward flow of foreign portfolio investment. Overall depletion has been witnessed in the forex reserves, and forex reserves, they have depleted by $13.8 billion in April to December 2024 because of balance of payment deficits, and other factors. So due to all these factors, our forex reserves, they have been declined, or they have depleted to a value of $13.8 billion. So this comes to a last point, and the last point is foreign portfolio investors turned net sellers. Foreign portfolio investors were the net sellers in the domestic market with net outflow at $18.5 billion. मतलब अक्टूबर 2024 से मार्च 2025 तक 18.5 USD billion dollars, or I would say US billion dollars, have flown out, which has shaken the entire Indian share market. समझ आई बात? Clear हो गया? If it is clear, just give me yes sir. If it is clear, just give me yes sir, so that I can move ahead. तो अभी तक हमने क्या किया? अभी तक हम अगर देखें तो we have just covered the first chapter. We have just covered the first chapter of our report, and the first chapter of our report is basically related to the estimates, approximations, and the future datas. So we have just completed with the first assessment and prospects. But in assessment and prospects, what I have included, I have even included this real economy as well as price situation, the actual datas. I have combined them in order to avoid repetition. But in the next session, that will be part 2, we will be covering money and credit. Let's decide that whether we will be covering in the next session or today only, but till this point we have covered. Now I have few questions on whatever data we have studied till now. Are you ready to solve few questions on the same? Guys, are you ready to solve few questions on the same? If you are ready, then just give me yes sir. Guys, if you are ready, then just give me yes sir, so that I can begin the discussion. If you are ready, just give me yes sir, so that I can begin the discussion. If you are excited to solve the questions on the same. But before I go with the questions, guys, अभी तक जो हमने पढ़ा है ना, जो कुछ हमने पढ़ा, उस सब का summary ये है. If you want the summary of the data which we have covered till now in last 1.5 hours, 100 minutes, in almost 100 minutes, the data, whatever data we have covered, the entire data is now visible on your screen. I hope you can see that. I hope you all can see that. Say yes or no. ठीक है जी, तो अगर आप इसे भी पढ़ लेंगे तो डेटा वाला पार्ट आपका चल जाएगा. You will be able to solve MCQs with the help of this slide itself. with the help of this slide itself. MCQ वाला sorted हो जाएगा, but the data, but the content, the facts, the concepts, the understanding which we have learned today from this session, that will help you in descriptive writing. Let's try to solve few questions. The first question is now on your screen. Which of the following was not a factor behind India's real GDP growth moderation to 6.5%? Weak investment and low productivity globally, decline in manufacturing gross value addition due to muted demand, deceleration in public sector investment growth, recovery in agriculture production, buoyant service sector. तो इनमें से कौन सा ऐसा फैक्टर नहीं है जिसकी वजह से आपकी जो एग्रीकल्चर ग्रोथ रेट है दैट हैज बीन मॉडरेटेड? गिव मी द आंसर. गिव मी द आंसर. वीक इन्वेस्टमेंट, ये ठीक है. डिक्लाइन इन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, ये भी ठीक है. रिकवरी इन एग्रीकल्चर प्रोडक्शन, ये भी ठीक है. बॉइंट सर्विस सेक्टर, ये भी ठीक है. ये सारे के सारे फैक्टर्स हैं जिसकी वजह से आपकी जो जीडीपी ग्रोथ रेट है वो कितनी है? 6.5%. बट डिसेलरेशन इन पब्लिक सेक्टर इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं. पब्लिक सेक्टर इन्वेस्टमेंट डिसेलरेट नहीं की गई. इट वॉज वेरी क्लियरली मेंशन इन दी नोट्स. Deceleration in public sector investment growth? No, it was stated that public sector continued to spearhead investment growth. तो जो आपका public sector है उसने पूरी कोशिश की for this investment growth. They have increased the investment in order to achieve the growth rates. So this is not the factor. Rest all can be the factor. They are true, due to which the growth rate is 6.5%. But this is incorrect. C option is absolutely correct. Nishant, Tina, and Parmeshwar Kumar have given the correct answers. Moving on to the next question. 2024-25, the share of service sector in India, GVA, has reached its highest since which year? Sir, it has reached to what value? It has reached to what value? Sir, it has reached to a value of 60. It has reached to a value of, give me the answer. It has reached to a value of 64.1%. मैंने आपको कहा था ना, ये देखो यहां पे आपको सब मिल जाएगा. ये रहा 64.1%. Here is the answer. So what is the contribution? So 64.1%. It is highest since financial year 2012-13. It is highest since financial year 2012-13. 2012-13 से पहले 2012-13 से पहले we have recorded this data. तो उसके बाद कभी ये डेटा रिकॉर्ड नहीं हुआ. According to CCPI, what is the weightage of renewable energy in climate protection performance? Renewable energy का weightage कितना? If you talk about greenhouse gas emission, for the greenhouse gas emission, its weightage is 40%. उसके अलावा जितने भी पैरामीटर्स थे सबकी weightage कितनी है? सर सबकी weightage है 20%. इसके अलावा जितने भी पैरामीटर्स थे they all have the same weightage, that is 20%. In which quarter of 2024 did Monetary Policy Committee shift its policy stance to neutral from withdrawal of accommodation? तो अक्टूबर 2004 में ये शिफ्ट 2024 में 2024 में ये शिफ्ट किया गया, and that shift was done in October, and October comes in October, November, December quarter. So answer is going to be D option. October, November, December quarter. So answer is going to be D option. That is absolutely correct. Shubdeep, Shilpi, Anuj, Nishant, you all have given the correct answer. अगला question देखो. Which of the following factors primarily drove the uptick in the core inflation in the second half of financial year 2024-25? Core inflation has witnessed an increase. What was the reason behind increase in core inflation? I discussed this in much detail. What was the reason? So the reason was increase in gold prices. The reason was increase in gold prices. What was the growth rate of India's merchandise import in 2024-25? If I talk about India's merchandise import in 2024-25 is what value? Is what value? Give me the answer. Merchandise import. imports. This is export. Merchandise export has witnessed a growth of 0.1%, but import has witnessed a growth of 6.2%. Import has witnessed a growth of 6.2%. That is absolutely correct. Agla question. Which mission was launched to advance green steel manufacturing in India? So green steel manufacturing के लिए we had green steel mission. We have green steel mission. E-drive is basically for EV vehicles. 30% adoption of EV vehicles by 2030. That is the target. So these are the things which you need to remember. As per the RBI annual report, which sector share in total employment declined in 2024? Trade share increased, services increased, construction increased, manufacturing, there was no comment, but yes, on agriculture there was a clear comment. So which sector share has decreased in the total employment? So total employment share has declined in the agriculture sector. So answer to this particular question is C option. During 2024-25, what was the net foreign direct investment inflow in India? In 2023-24, net inflow was $10.1 billion, and in 2024-25, the net inflow is $0.4 billion. The net inflow is $0.4 billion. So answer is going to be C option. Next, what was the change in WMA limit? So the change in WMA limit was from 47,000 crores. The limit has been increased to 60,000 crores in 2024-25, and this was done on 1st of July 2024. A option is absolutely the correct answer. Moving on to the next. In the climate change performance index, what percentage overall score is given to energy use? Sir, energy use is given what percent? Energy use, renewable energy, climate policy 20%, but greenhouse gas emission 40%. So answer to this particular question is again 20%. In 2024-25, what was the average core inflation? Core inflation means excluding food and fuel. So fuel inflation has recorded a deflation of 2.5%. Core inflation was of what value? Overall inflation for 2024-25 is recorded to be 4.6%. Core inflation is recorded to be 3.5%. Core inflation is recorded to be 3.5%. Moving on to next. In 2024-25, what was the India's effective capital expenditure growth over the previous year? Effective capital expenditure growth over the previous year. I'm talking about effective capital expenditure. Effective capital expenditure was 4.4% of GDP, and for 2025-26, it is 4.3% of GDP. This data is also important. But if you talk about the growth, so growth is 5.2%, which was earlier, if I'm not wrong, it was 18.9%. If I'm not wrong, earlier this growth was 18.9%. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? I'm a bit dicey. I'm not sure. I'm a bit dicey. I'm not sure. If you're sure, then give me the growth rate as well. So it is 4.0%, 4.3%. This is 19.8%. This is 19.8%, not 18.9. Absolutely correct, Shubhadeep. I was wrong. This is correct. Okay, guys, take the screenshot. Don't share your answer. Take the screenshot. This is going to be your homework. 14th question is your homework. Quickly take the screenshot. I'll count till 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Take the screenshot of this question as well. This is again going to be your homework. So 14th and 15th question are your homework. Do type their answers after the session in the comment section below, and do share your feedback. How was this session? Do share your suggestions regarding the same. Take the screenshot. Done? Okay guys, so this will be all. I will be covering annual report in few parts. So this is part 1 which we have completed today. I will be taking bare minimum part 2 as well as part 3. So in 3 parts we will be completing this. what I think is, rather than giving you the entire annual report in one session, I will be giving you in pieces, and there will be a adequate gap of maybe 3 to 4 days, so that you get 3 to 4 days window to learn part 1. Once you are overdone with part 1, then I will be taking part 2. Then you will be overdone with part 2, then I will be taking up with part 3. इससे होगा क्या, जिस दिन हमारा part 3 खत्म होगा उसके 3 दिन के बाद you will be 100% ready with your annual report, और इस रिपोर्ट को दोबारा रिवाइज नहीं करना पड़ेगा. अगर मैं आज आपको 3 या 4 घंटे का एक सेशन दे दूं तो उससे क्या होगा, आप सुन लोगे, पढ़ भी लोगे, अच्छा भी लगेगा कि सर ने करा दिया, लेकिन वो आपके ऊपर बर्डन हो जाएगा. सो मैं तो करा दूंगा, बट आई डोंट वांट दैट शुड बी अ बर्डन ऑन यू. वी विल बी डूइंग इन 3 parts so that we will be learning for this on regular basis. Thank you Parmeshwar, thank you so much. I hope guys everything is done. I hope you all have understood the session. I will be informing you soon कि part 2 कब होगा, part 3 कब होगा. मैं जल्दी आपको inform करके उसके session already schedule करवा दूंगा, so that you have the visibility when you have part 2, so that before coming to part 2 you cover this particular PDF in much detail. Done guys? Is it done? If you have any doubt, you may ask please. If you haven't liked the session yet, hit the like button before leaving, and do not forget to share the link of this session with your friends, so that more and more students, they should cover this session, they should follow this session in order to complete their annual report. I promise you guys, I promise you, in next 10 days you will be overdone with the report, and most of the data, most of the concepts, most of the understandings related to the report will be on your fingertips. Done? Done guys? Shall we conclude? Okay. Thank you so much for joining guys. We'll catch you in the next session. Bye bye. Take care. Good luck. God bless you all. Bye.